there is a very urgent development we really need to talk about. Many of you might be aware of the Russel Brand case. The famous British TV film personality is being accused of sexual misconduct that has allegedly taken place roughly a decade ago. The allegations have been brought forward publicly on TV, and although there is no legal case against the YouTube superstar with over 6 million followers, YouTube has decided to demonetize him. What's worse, British parliamentarians send letters to other online platforms pressuring them to follow in YouTube's footsteps, and are now starting to heavily pressure Rumble, a platform that has rejected the demands of punishing someone without trial and for something unrelated to what that person does on the platform. The Rumble has now already been threatened with legal action against its executives in the UK, allegedly running afoul of the brand new online safety bill. So this is really bad, and I want to discuss it with someone in the UK who knows a lot about journalism. Joining me to discuss the case is therefore my friend who's been on the show before, the journalist Dr. Graham Majin, a senior lecturer in documentary journalism at Bournemouth University with more than 20 years experience working in TV, news, factual filmmaking, and media production. Graham, thanks so much for coming online again on such short notice.
Pleasure. Good to see you again, Pascal.
Graham, this is really an outstanding case, and I wanted to talk to you because you are in the UK, you are a journalist, and you've been following also some of the legal developments around journalism. Can you tell me what your take is at this particular case of Russel Brand, and also this Digital Service Act is brand new in the UK, right? It's just come out, and it's already being levied against people to basically skip a trial stage and go directly to conviction based upon allegations. What do you make out of this?
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, there's lots to talk about. Just to start off with, let's just be kind of very clear about one thing in case there's any misunderstanding. The allegations involve rape and sexual offences, and let's be really clear. Rape is a despicable, horrible crime, and if anyone is found guilty of rape or sexual offences, I think they should be punished severely. So let's just be really, really clear about that from the outset. So your second point, of course, is that Russel Brand has not been found guilty of anything. He's not even been charged with anything. These allegations have appeared in a Channel 4 documentary and in the Times newspaper. So they are accusations. And I think what disturbs a lot of people, a lot of perhaps fair-minded, impartial people, is the timing of all this. Because if we go back 10, 15 years, Russel Brand was a celebrity. Now, at that time, I took very little interest in Russel Brand. I'll be brutally honest with you. I thought he was a loathsome individual who did cruel pranks. I just thought he was a narcissistic celebrity and of very little interest to me personally. He was, however, I mean, he had at that time a set of political views, and he was courted by politicians in the UK who wanted his endorsement, and he was a kind of darling of people who shared those opinions. At the same time, he was behaving in an appalling way. He was very promiscuous, and he's admitted all this. He's admitted this in books and so on. So what's changed since then and today is that he's reformed himself, I believe. I've never met him. I've got, no bias or interest towards him. But I understand he's cleaned up his act. He's no longer a drug addict. I understand he's kind of married and so on, and he's settled down. So from a kind of ethical point of view, he seems to have remade his life. But what's changed also over the last year or two or three are his political views, which have swung, as far as I can tell, 180 degrees round in the other direction. Now, the way I analyze this kind of political dimension, because I'm not really a political commentator, but I regard his views as in the past as being supportive of what I call the official ideology and the official set of narratives. And now I would say he's swung over to the other side. He's climbed over the fence and he supports the unofficial ideology, and he's in effect an unofficial journalist. So really that's what's changed. And the problem, the thing that people find very disturbing about this is the timing. Why was the official media, the mainstream media, not interested in his horrible behavior 10 years ago? And why are they suddenly interested now? It's almost as if he's been targeted for destruction. The only thing that seems to have changed are his political and ideological views. So that's what's disturbing, I think, about the case. And that's, I guess, why you want to discuss it now. It seems more than just let's call out someone who's been behaving badly.
That's one part of it. The other thing, and you're absolutely right, if the allegation against him should be found to be true, and there was rape, and there was if these allegations are true, then of course there should be punishment. But what we are seeing now is that the punishment comes before the actual, even before charges are brought forward against him, right? At this point, what we have is public awareness that there are women who are saying that this happened. And of course, this needs to be investigated, no question about that. But it's not just the timing and not just the fact that his views changed and that he's being now charged, but that YouTube has decided to demonetize him, and that the UK publicly elected officials are pressuring online companies, platforms, to demonetize this person solemnly based upon these allegations. And this destroys people's livelihoods. And we had this moment 5 years ago, with the hashtag #MeToo movement, when we had a lot of formerly very big names that in the end were charged and actually also convicted. But we also had cases in which entire careers were destroyed. And I remind us here of Kevin Spacey. Kevin Spacey was accused of raping young 17, 18-year-old boys. And these allegations were later found to be untrue, or he was cleared of them in court, but his entire career is destroyed. He was the movie star, the film star of what was this US series? He was playing the president, and this maverick. What was it? House of Cards.
House of Cards, I think. Yes.
And he lost that role. Everything went to shambles. And although later he was cleared in court of the of all of these allegations, but his career was destroyed. And that was with a film star, with a movie star, right? And now we are seeing something happening to an online personality who managed to build like 6 million followers on YouTube. That's huge, as a political commentator. Can you maybe talk about what you make out of this kind of reversing the bringing the punishment even before bringing charges? Is that something that you have been observing happening in the public space before, or not?
Yes, absolutely. And I write about it in my book, Truthophobia. And I refer to it as venomous innuendo. It's a tactic to destroy people. I also refer to it as a type of journalism which is very much of the moment, which is authoritarian journalism, where journalists feel that they have some ethical, political duty to destroy people, attack them and destroy people if they do not say things which, or if they say things which undermine the official narratives and the official ideology. I mean, probably the most famous example, I write about this in my book, is Donald Trump, and who was subject to all sorts of, and continues to be subject to all sorts of unproven accusations. The most famous being that he was an agent of the Russian state, Russiagate, Russia. Now, all of this has now been shown beyond reasonable doubt to have been a hoax, to be a swindle, to be funded by the Democrat Party and with assistance from the intelligence agencies, the FBI, and the role of the media was to be aggressively incurious, just to repeat the narrative over and over again and not to really investigate it. And it's that tactic of repetition. If you repeat something every day, people believe it's true. And psychologists have shown this to be true. You remember the things that are repeated over and over again. Even if someone says this isn't true, you kind of remember it. So it's a tactic of venomous innuendo. I had a look at, and there's a fascinating article on the BBC because it does, I find it quite revealing. I kind of pulled this off BBC Online. Russel Brand, how the comedian built his YouTube audience on half truths, and it's quite fascinating because it just kind of reinforces. I think a lot of people are suspicious, and these suspicions that there's more to this than a kind of moral outrage. And I'll just read a sentence or two. It says, the first time Russel Brand dipped his toe into the water of conspiracy theories in early 2021, the effect was swift. A YouTube channel whose videos normally received about 100,000 views was suddenly visited by more than 1 million people. So the BBC has a problem with the fact that he's getting a lot of views on YouTube. And again, that sentence here says, it was not until early 2021 when the tone of his videos shifted that his audience started rising more sharply, doubling to nearly 5 million by the end of the year. I find that very, very revealing, because it's in effect saying that what's really the problem with Russell Brand is that he has political views, ideological views, which are counter to the official narratives, and he's gaining a big audience. And it's that old kind of cliche that from the Second World War, when the bombers were over the target, directly over the target area, that was where the flak, the anti-aircraft fire, was most intense. So yeah, I can completely understand why people find this very, very suspicious, the timing of all this and the fact that he's been targeted arguably for destruction. And I think you wanted to, you've referred also to the UK government's role and this kind of very strange letter from the Culture, Media and Sport Committee to Rumble, asking them to demonetize him. And really a brilliant response. I'll also read this out from Rumble because it does kind of sum up the situation. Quote, "We regard it as deeply inappropriate and dangerous that the UK Parliament would attempt to control who is allowed to speak on our platform or earn a living from doing so. Singling out an individual and demanding his ban is even more disturbing, given the absence of any connection between the allegations and his content on Rumble." So it's the same point, what's being done to Russell Brand appears to be this process of this ad hominem attack on him, this venomous innuendo to kind of discredit him so that, you shouldn't believe anything he says because he's a bad person. Yet that's a fallacy, really, because if someone has done bad things, immoral things, does that necessarily invalidate their political or ideological views? Well, the two things are different. For example, I listen to classical music and so on. Amongst others, I quite like Wagner. Well, Wagner held views that are quite abhorrent in terms of, well, does that mean he should be banned and we should erase Wagner? Karl Marx, considered to be one of the greatest philosophers of recent times, he wrote appalling things which by today's standards would be deeply, deeply racist, deeply, deeply offensive. So should we cancel Karl Marx? So yeah, I think you're right to highlight these issues.
You just wonder where this comes from. To me, this is like, it comes out of nothing. I've been following Russel Brand as well. I'm one of these 6 million subscribers on YouTube that he has, for the simple reason that he says a lot of things, and some of the things I find very valuable, because his analysis actually often gives a spin to things. And a lot of us who use these online platforms, we don't necessarily use them in order to find out what happened this morning somewhere in downtown London. And it's not that kind of journalism. What we're looking for is for a help of analysis to understand the world, right? This is also what we're doing. We engage in discussions in order to help people also think about stuff and think it through. In a sense, we do this work not just of like reporting what happened, but also how can you look at it. And Russel Brand did a lot of that. And the thing is, it came out of the blue. I didn't see this coming. I mean, I have no problems believing that a personality like him 10, 12 years ago, or even more recent, might have had very, very outgoing sexual behavior, and that some of this might even be classified, might have been inappropriate. That could happen, and if it did, it should be punished, right? There should be a legal process behind that if he abused somebody's rights on their bodies, obviously. But the idea of due process and of the not only the benefit of the doubt, but the idea of being what was it called, until proven guilty, innocent
until proven guilty. Yes,
guilty.
Of course,
That's such a fundamental principle that I do not understand how it is that British politicians can think it appropriate to try to destroy this personality, and that the public media goes along with that destruction attempt. And it comes at the very time when the Digital Services Act, and maybe we can talk about that one, has gone into effect. And this Digital Service Act is now also being used against Rumble. So I wonder, like, is there also some motive behind this to use this as a way to put pressure and outright scare these platforms into submission? Because it seems so suspicious that this Digital Service Act is like, what, 1 or 2 months old, and the EU just has their Digital Service Act. Sorry, in the EU it's called Digital Service Act. In the United Kingdom it's called, in the United Kingdom it's called the Online Safety Bill.
Yeah, it's going
to
I
misnamed
become an
them
act
here.
Shortly.
But I misnamed
There's a lot of them
here.
around, yeah.
But they are new, and these things are now putting, like, are giving government the power to regulate what it will be platformed and what not. How do you evaluate this?
Okay, well, there's quite a lot in that question, or quite a few questions in your question, Pascal. So let's just kind of rewind, if I may. And you talked about due process, and I think you're right. I mean, I think you could have a whole podcast, you could have a whole series of podcasts on the importance to what we would recognize as Western civilization, in particular the Anglo-American tradition, the common law tradition. You could argue that the whole thing is based on this idea of rule of law. Rule of law is a way of restraining something dark in human nature, something tribal and very destructive. And again, I write about this at some length in my book, Truthophobia, and about how this became eroded, because we had the European Anglo-American Enlightenment during the 18th century, and this turned into what I refer to as Victorian liberalism, which was a kind of refinement of it, and philosophers such as John Stuart Mill, and so on and so on and so on. And all of that was based on restraining these kind of darker impulses that are within all of us. And my thesis, which not everyone agrees with, is that something went wrong in the last third of the 20th century. It coincided with the baby boomer generation. They wanted to create a utopian society. They wanted to throw away and destroy the kind of planks of Western civilization. It was kind of nihilistic. And they believed at the time that something much better, some utopian society would emerge if they did this. And I think what we're seeing now are the poisonous, toxic fruit of what they did. And they did it with good intentions. It's not about trying to have a simplistic blaming of them. But what's been released, what happens if you take away these safeguards of the Enlightenment and Victorian liberalism? What emerges is our animal instinct. And for thousands of years, that's been the norm. Civilization has only been short periods of history. So what we're seeing is the re-emergence of a kind of witch burning and the mob culture where you don't need due process. It's just, this is a bad person. This person is not part of our tribe. This person has betrayed our tribe. They are heretics. This is a heretic who is not accepting the doctrines and the rules, and that person must be destroyed. And in the past, we burnt people, and we literally burnt their books. The hangman burnt Voltaire's books. The Catholic Church had an index of prohibited books, massive censorship. And we burnt witches. We burnt them, and we thought we were being good. I say we, the people who did it believed they were doing something righteous. But it's something dark within human nature, and we're heading back towards that. We're hurtling back towards what we've always been. The Enlightenment and Victorian liberalism restrained us. A rule of law restrained us, and it's being replaced by this mob instinct. And we can move on if you want to talk a little bit in a bit more detail about these bits of legislation.
Let's do that. I mean, the point that you made is very valuable. That this seems to be something unhinged, and this unhingedness, I think we cannot solve it tonight in this discussion. But something broke, and this idea that elected officials would actually pressure a punishment before even charges are pushed. This is what's the outrageous thing to me. Whatever the allegations are, the fact that you want to do that outrages me quite a bit. But